looks like we got the recording going, just as everybody probably is used to if you've attended some of these here before in the past. We use Zoom for this. We do record all of them. We will make these available to everybody who's attended, and actually anybody who hasn't attended also will have availability. So if you want to refer anybody to some portions of this webinar, please feel free to share it with them or have them subscribe to our mailing list and be sure that they get this. Um, Today, Jamie Norris, our partner solutions manager, and Jamie has recently been promoted, which is part of why we're having this. So part of Jamie's role we're going to be introducing some new services that will be available to partners that are surrounding this new role. And so she'll give you a little bit of detail on that a little bit later in the presentation. But congratulations to Jamie, being here with RingLogix for a while. She's developed a lot of deep expertise in both PBX and RingOS, and so we want to be able to leverage that. And Jamie, if you don't mind going on to the next slide.
Yes, sir.
She is also steering today, so I will occasionally ask Jamie to move to the next slide. So this is a webinar that actually been thinking about for quite a long time. To pull it together, though, required a lot of things that we needed to kind of internally develop in order to be able to do this in the way that I was hoping to do it. And so what you're going to see here is we're going to walk through this in terms of what we think is a kind of normal process. Now, everybody does implementations a little bit differently. So the order that we walk through this will be what we think is sort of a logical flow, but you may have some other ideas in terms of how you want to implement this. But it'll start with the quote prep and the customer account prep. Generally speaking, it's not the first thing that people think about when they think about implementations, but there's a good reason for that to actually start at the beginning, because some of what we're doing here in these phases will actually influence some of the other things that might be available to do in some of the later stages. I'll then talk a little bit about network prep, the LNP process prep and submission. Jamie's going to take that. And then she'll get deeply into the PBX prep and PBX creation parts and the significant number of the resources that we have available to partners now that we will be referencing. You'll see they're around the PBX and PBX creation part. So Jamie's done a great job of pulling that together. And then we'll talk about the new way we're kind of looking at Jamie's role and how that might influence some of the ways we can work with partners here in the future. So, Jamie, if you could
Yep.
maybe go to the next one. So to give a little bit of an understanding here, the way we viewed this is these are building blocks that you can take and you can put them in whatever order you want. But the whole idea here is we give you some resources and checklists and things so that you can take the building blocks, build yourself a repeatable process, use that to train others within your organization on what your process would look like. And that's great if you're bringing a new employee on. Now they have a standardized methodology for turning up a customer. But it's also useful too if you've got maybe 2 or 3 people that might touch a customer during implementation. You have a framework for what everybody's roles are and what pieces they're responsible for and what documents and things that they might be responsible for in terms of getting information together in order to close out the final successful implementation. And then always, ensuring good customer outcomes is, the goal for almost all of our partners, right? I think when I talk to you, the number one thing you think about is your partner well taken care of, right? Or customer well taken care of, and that's part of what this presentation is hopefully going to help partners do is develop a repeatable process that produces great outcomes. And then support issues. So we'll be talking about some things that, if you implement them or if you're collecting and retaining information, it'll make the support process a whole lot easier, and maybe even avoid issues in the steps that you may be taking here. So, Jamie,
Yeah. All
um,
right. Oh, you want to take this one?
yeah, I'll do it and then I'll turn it right over to you.
Okay.
So, some of you have already been admitted to RingLogix University. Um, it's been in pilot, but we're really formally going to be releasing this on April 1st. So it will be come out of pilot and effectively it's going to be available to any partner or any of the employees at our partners or organizations that want to take courses on RingLogix, and UCaaS, general concepts around UCaaS as well. So it's not just about RingLogix and RingOS and the PBX. There's some general concepts, things that people I think will find useful. There's beginner and advanced courses. We've got over 50 of them. There's some technical, call it tracks, and then there's some sales and marketing tracks that we'll be building out as we move forward. So we've got, I think, good base level content, but we've got call it strong imaginations in terms of things we want to be delivering, and this is going to be one of the things that we're focused on here in Q2. And if you have thoughts or ideas on training, could be a class, a long form training sort of class if you think that there's some value in a specific topic that might be weighty, or it could be very simply like, hey, I want to know more about a specific feature. We would love to hear about that. And so our ask is to tell us what you think would be useful. Anyway, if you can roll to the next slide, Jamie, I think
Yeah.
this is gonna start us off here in the process. By the way, if you have any questions, comments, please drop them into the chat. I'll try and respond to those as I can. We will also have Q&A at the end as well.
Yep. Great. Thanks. So what I'm here to talk about is quote and account prep. So I'm going to go ahead and move forward. So quoting, RingOS has a quoting tool embedded in the system. So it is a frequently skipped step by some partners. If you haven't checked it out or you maybe want a training on it, we can get you with your PGM. But the cool part about quoting is that it actually provides you with a paper trail. So your terms and conditions do have to be locked and loaded in order for you to use the quoting tool. The process is, if you're not familiar with it, you would create a quote. You're able to send that quote to your customer. Your customer then would accept that quote electronically, which your terms and conditions would provide like a click wrap timestamp. So you can actually see in the quoting tool when your customer accepted it and from what IP. But besides the contractual, I guess you'd say, part of the quoting, the quote can actually be activated on. The reason that I personally think this is awesome, right, is that a lot of times the sales team are creating the quotes. Then a technician is going to go ahead and have to build the customer off of that quote. And we kind of know how techs and sales get along, right? They're two different breeds of people. So the cool part is that your sales team can create the quote. It would have all of the users that need to be created. It would have the retail billing already associated with it. And when you hit activation, it flows. So the activation process actually builds the customer. It creates the PBX domain. It would create those users with the retail component already added, and it would add any one-time charges that were on the quote. So it essentially builds that whole shell for the tech that now they just really have to go create call flow in the PBX dashboard. So, and we did put, activation follows without needing a technical resource. I mean, sales could actually activate activate a quote, technical could activate a quote, but it could be done without really needing each other, if that makes sense, right? So quoting is really cool. If you've yet to utilize it, please reach out. We can definitely help you. And there are some training courses that we're going to acknowledge here in one of the slides. But once you have created your quote, right, and your customers accepted it, I feel like part of the account prep that a lot of our partners maybe miss out on is having that first meeting with their customer post quote acceptance, right? I like to kind of call it like a project management meeting. I work with a lot of you guys. I've worked with a lot of you that are on this call directly. I work with a lot of partners in general, right? Sometimes I feel like when I'll ask for things, they're like, oh, I got to go back to the customer and get that. Or I got to, so it pauses your process, right? I think if we could schedule one meeting and get all of the things that we need in that one meeting, it would be beneficial for you as the partner. It's great for the customer. We all know that when you have a meeting with a customer and then you have to keep going back to them for things, they start to ignore you a little bit, right? And then you don't have the items that you need to move forward with their installation. So having that first meeting with your customer post quote acceptance is great. And we're going to outline the items that you would need to collect in that meeting. So you would schedule that time with your customer to get the necessary info. We actually have a little list of items that you can even send. Hey, I'm going to need these things. Can you have them ready for me by our meeting time? So we're going to give you resources that you can use to guide that discussion. But the first thing with account prep that a lot of people forget is, how's my customer going to pay, right? They've accepted this quote. I take credit card billing. So one of the first things that you can bring up in your project management meeting is the credit card authorization form. So all of our partners have access to this form, but I don't know how widely it's used, but we're going to kind of bring it back. So it's just a simple form that has all the customer information authorizing you as the partner the ability to charge their credit card. So when we send out this deck, all these links are live as well. So you'll be able to just click on the link and download the form, which is cool. So if you haven't seen this credit card authorization form, if this is your first glance into it, there is one pre-created that you can add your logo to and make it your own. So that's like, account prep. So we've broken this down into sections. So that's kind of billing account. Now, next is the reference to how do we create a quote and how do we activate a quote. If you're not in RingLogix U, please create a ticket with partner success and give us your email address and we will add you to RingLogix U. We have 2 courses created in there. One is how you create the quote. And then the next one is how you activate the quote. So we walk through creating and activating step by step so you can kind of see what it looks like. So if you've never tried it out and maybe you're nervous, go watch the video, see what it's like, right? All right. So I'm going to kick it back to Wayne for a section. Network prep. Wayne is definitely more skilled than I am in regarding network prep. So here you go, Wayne.
Great, thanks, Jamie.
You're welcome.
And sort of like Jamie's, we're going to walk through some things that we're going to make some suggestions on, and then I'm going to end this section with some additional resources. Some of those will be in the RingLogix University. But first, I just wanted to visit some core concepts. I know we have partners who are fairly new to voice, but maybe very experienced on the network side of things, and understand networks from a data perspective. But anytime you're talking about real-time communications and voice, there's some key differences here that I think it's just helpful to understand before we proceed too far. When it comes to real-time communications, the network quality is key to a successful implementation. Delays and interruptions in the network can negatively affect the user experience, right? I think you think about data. Data can be sent, data packets can be sent out of order and even sometimes put back together, and it doesn't really affect the end user in any way, shape, or form. Voice and media packets, though, extremely time sensitive. They require low latency in comparison, and any kind of packet loss can really degrade the quality of the call and the user's experience. So everything we talk about in this section is really going to be with an eye to minimize latency, jitter, and packet loss. And if you can do a little bit of upfront work, you're ahead of the game here. And of course, your customers are likely to have better outcome. So Jamie, if you could, thank you. The kinds of issues that we're really attempting to avoid here are things like on go live date, the customer's telling you, hey, I got choppy audio, or calls are dropping, or there's some one-way audio impairment, meaning I have a conversation, I'm talking, they can't hear me, but I can hear them just fine. And then you get some weirdness sometimes around like BLF keys acting a little wonky, and that all creates a bad opening day presentation of the product you're trying to deliver. So as a precaution, some of the steps that we're going to want to take are going to be in this next slide here. The easy one is bandwidth assessment. I think you know when we think of bandwidth, I think we all have an ISP that we have at home. I think we have a fairly decent understanding of what it means. But what you will want to do is assess the bandwidth needs of that particular customer beyond just the voice installations. You know, I'll talk from experience of having a customer who at 10 o'clock in the morning would have a regular download of data, and they would repeatedly have issues during the day where the call quality was bad, and it's centered around this same time frame is kind of weird, right? Well, if you take a look at what was going on in the network, there were very large file downloads. I've had other ones that used specific BI tools that would have these really weird intermittent issues, and you couldn't figure it out until, you know, there was one day a connection between an executive using these BI tools that were just sucking up a whole lot of the network capacity. So you want to understand these things in sort of broad terms, but you also want to understand them specifically around concurrent call usage. And then you have things like SIP-ALG. So being able to do a SIP-ALG assessment before you start an installation really gets you in a position where you can get ahead of probably one of the more common issues that we see through support. And it's very easily addressable. It's very easy to detect, and if you just take a few minutes, it's one of those things that I think pays dividends to have on your checklist. And then testing for double NAT. So double NAT simply could mean that I've got two pieces of equipment, both with NAT on the pieces of equipment, and they're causing issues on the network, and it's a little hard to diagnose this without running some kind of tests, right? And so when you take those first few items into uh, um, you know, call it to your assumptions on the customer's network, you get pretty far with that. And then there's the things of like just understanding what kind of service the ISP is delivering. If you're on, let's say, a Comcast network, well, you're likely that's shared by other customers on that same network. So you may have impairments of performance periodically because of that. And so just understanding that customer's ISP, perhaps you want to recommend something. I know some partners have standard things that they like to recommend, standard ISPs, standard network equipment. But where you can't make that recommendation, or that customer is maybe in a contract, at least understand what that service is and where to go get assistance should you need it, and understand what kind of equipment that ISP is provided. So I covered everything at a very high level here. My first suggestion to anybody where this is a new topic is to go to RingLogix University. So we have built out classes here on those topics. You'll be able to dive in a little bit deeper and have a decent understanding of not only how what those issues are, but also how to best resolve them. And in the RingLogix University, some of the knowledge base articles that are linked here within the slides we're going to give you are actually linked within the training sessions. So and tools like the SIP ALG detector that we linked to, that is also in the RingLogix University. So I would say that's probably the easiest first stop. But if you need to go directly to those knowledge base articles, Jamie put those here for you to go directly there. And then what you're also going to see is Jamie will talk in a minute about a VoIP site survey. So this is a document that we've used for a while, and I think it's an excellent document for everybody on your staff to be acclimated to. And in specific on that document, Jamie, if you can jump to the next slide here. We did have two boxes that I wanted to just kind of point out that these are network related. You may wish to add more information, but this is just kind of some basic information to understand around who the ISP is, what they're providing to the customer, and then some call it brief details on the network and some of the equipment there.
Thank you.
To you.
Cool. So I'm going to talk a little bit about PBX prep, and I have a little quote here. By failing to prepare, you're preparing to fail, right? The great Benjamin Franklin said that. So, I guess what that means to me, for those of you who know me, I'm very organized, right? And if you're not organized, I'm going to try to keep you organized. But, PBX prep, the reason why you should do it is it just makes things easier, right? And we have some tools that are already available to you. And I'll be honest with you, right? Like Wayne said, I've been around a long time. We have all these tools that in documents that we give our partners, and I don't think we've ever had a cohesive binding of all of them together, right? So that's what we're trying to do today. So we've already armed you in your toolbox with a PBX routing sheet. You have a user details form. And, and then one other big component when we're creating a PBX is hardware, right? Hardware is the one thing that RingLogix does not provide, that you go source yourself. We have a ton of partners that are, reutilizing their customers' old hardware. So we do want to throw this into the mix, even though it's like not a tool that we provide to you at RingLogix. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is the PBX routing sheet. So if you're seeing this for the first time, it's actually 4 pages, and I'm going to show you all of them. If you've seen it before, but you don't utilize it, why don't you, right? So PBX routing sheets, what this for me is, and when I'm trying to get a partner to use it, is this is you documenting that customer's inbound call flow, or inbound call flow. So, I can recall PBX sessions. I'll have a partner who they just deployed this system, and they'll call me and they'll be like, Jamie, I built this system and now the customer wants to make a bunch of changes. And I was like, well, why? Well, honestly, because they assumed they knew what the customer wanted, right? They never really sat down with them and went through actual call flow. I know one of my big terms I use, especially when I'm helping a new partner, is if you could build your dream PBX for your own organization, what would it be? And we walk through that, right? I've noticed that a lot of other providers, especially like maybe some larger ones, there are certain things that I just take for granted that are key, like auto attendance and call queues. That some of my partners' customers don't have these things because it's like a paid service with some other providers, right? So they didn't opt to have an auto attendant because it wasn't free, or they didn't opt to have call queues. But what this form allows you to do is sit down with your customer and document exactly what they want their PBX to do. So, the first part is basic, and you may already have this. And I'm not saying you have to walk through and fill out every box. Take what serves you, and but document it, right? Sit down. Your customer will feel special. So you have a section for billing information, E911 registration address. That's super important to capture, right? Definition of business hours. So if you're going to create auto attendance, or you're going to have call flow that's going to be different during different times of the day, you're going to need this. Then there's main PBX features. So once again, you can, edit or omit what doesn't serve you, but these are key popular features that your customer may be interested in. You can also document in the next page the user extension. So, the things that you need to create a user: extension number, first and last name, email address. If they have pre-owned hardware, this is a good space to document what model phone they have. You could even capture the MAC address, and then user scope of these specific extensions. Then, something else that's kind of forgotten, right? Voicemail only extensions. Do they have group voicemail boxes? Will they need any of those? Then if I continue on, hunt groups and ring groups, right? So this not only allows you to document what extension number it is, but what you want it named and who's in that queue, right? So what users from the previous page are going to be in that queue. Then you have your auto attendant documentation. So, button 1, where does that go? Button 2, where does that go? So it's all laid out in a really nice, readable format, not only for you, but for your customer. How many times have we done ports, right? And we don't know all the numbers. Oh man, my customer never told me that they had a toll-free number. Well, sometimes, did we ask? Sometimes you don't remember things unless you're asked. But this form almost makes it bulletproof that you're not going to forget to ask something if you use it. Then any of the weird stuff, right? Special configurations. So if there's something that can't fit into one of the boxes that's on the document, this is a place for you to notate any special configs. Like Kevin needs his, phone to forward here this time of day or whatever, something weird. And then the best part, right? Your customer signs off on it. You sit down with your customer and you go over this, and then you say, hey, did we get it all? Cool, let's sign it. And then you have their acceptance. There's too many times I've heard that, partners have set up and then the customer's like, oh, I wanted this. I wanted this and I didn't tell you. This kind of seals the deal a little bit for you, right? Not that you're not going to go back and change it if they need to, but you get a little bit of buy-in from your customer when you do this. Hopefully that makes sense to everybody. All right. Our next piece of prep. And it's sort of the same. I don't always love to document my users here because this particular form is not importable. But if you have the information here, it can be copied and pasted into the user details form. This link is not only available in the portal. So in the portal, there's a user details link that you can click on and download this CSV file. We also provide it in your onboarding. When you come on as a partner, you get gosh, I'm drawing a blank, like a page of information with important documents, right?
Yeah,
So this is, go ahead, I'm sorry.
getting started package, I think is what
Yeah,
we
so
call it,
like
correct?
you're getting started kit. Yeah. So but basically what I wanted to highlight, there's 4 basic pieces of information you're going to need to create a user. You're going to need an extension number, a first name and a last name, and an email address. So what I'm showing you here is that, sometimes the first name of your user is going to be front and the last name is going to be desk, and that's okay. They don't have to be proper names. Email addresses also do not have to be unique to each user, but they do need to be there for possible voicemail notification to email. And if you'd like to send your user that welcome email to allow them to log into the platform or to custom, items like mobile app and web application. So this is available. It should be in your toolkit, should be filled out. It'll make your life easy because you're able to import it and create all your users in one shot. Those of you who have heard me say this line, I'm lazy slash efficient, right? I always fill this out and upload my users. It's just a time saver. And then our next piece for PBX prep is going to be the hardware. You know, knowing your hardware is so important. Getting it ordered or getting the details on the existing hardware that your customer owns. So, you know, some things you want to document. What's the model phone that they're using? What are the MAC addresses? And do you know the config guides if applicable, right? So if there may be like a non-auto provisioning device, do you know how to configure them? We do always recommend that our partners maybe get one or two vendors that they can be the expert on. If you ever need vendor recommendation, we don't get granular at RingLogix with like what phone you should use when you're ordering new hardware. We will refer you to your expert, which is your distribution company, wherever you buy your phones from. But if you ever want to know, you know, the most provision vendor on the platform, we'll tell you it's not a secret, right? Or if you're new and you're looking for something easy to use, we'll let you know what vendor. Just, you know, as far as models, we will refer you to your distribution. So, all right. I don't see any questions coming through yet. So, got a quiet group today. So, our next step, right? So, once we've collected all of the data, right? Oh, look, somebody, in the note
Sure.
section on a quote be used to
I'll
communicate.
grab it, Jamie.
Okay, you're going to go ahead and take it? Okay, cool. Wayne's going to answer those for us. All right, so our next section is PBX creation. So once you've created that quote, you're going to activate it. Now, I want you to know that this process is not exclusive to using the quoting tool, right? You may, of course, manually create the customer, manually create the domain, you know, manually add those users with retail billing, and then manually add the one-time charges. And there is a link in the knowledge base on the A to Z cheat sheet on how to manually do those things. You know, if you're not hip to the quoting tool or, you know, for whatever reason you just don't want to do it, all of these things are able to be done manually. But what you're going now, you're going to take the tools in your tool belt that you've collected from your customer to build this out, right? So you're going to use that PBX routing sheet to create that call flow. You're going to import that user details to create your users. You're going to know your hardware details. So when you sit down to create the PBX, you can do it in one shot. You don't have to keep going back to the customer and, oh, hey, I forgot to ask you this, or, oh, man, I forgot to get your user emails. So basically, all this pre-work that you've done has set you up to just basically be able to go in and sit down and create that PBX. Oh, what's going on? There we go. Sorry, my little thing disappeared. Now, with all that being said, this is a lot to remember, right? So we created you a checklist. And we've taken all of the components that we've broken down and given you a pre-install checklist. So this is a resource that's going to be available to you. It's broken down into steps based on the sections that we did. All right. And once again, you can remove things that don't serve you. It doesn't have to be in this order, but basically steps 2 through 5 are items that you would do with that on-site meeting that would allow you to, you know, work on 6 and 7, which is your PBX creation and your LMP submission that we've yet to talk about. And then we also have available to you already, and it's been available, the actual install best practices. So that walks you through some, it kind of groups a little bit of this, plus some additional items on day that you drop off the phones on site to when your port has received confirmation. So you also have, if you've never seen install best practices, we'll get you links to that as well. So once again, resources, you have your routing sheets, your user details. now your pre-install checklist, and then also your customer install best practices checklist that you've already had. If you haven't seen it, please reach out to your partner growth manager and they will get that over to you. So LMP, right? LMP and it's porting's our favorite, right? Everyone, porting's the best. So let's talk about what we can do to prep our LMP and our number for our PBX. So anyone who's ever done a build with me knows that dislike live cutovers, right? Where we cut over on the same day that our port happens. And the reason I dislike it is because there's an easier way. When you purchase a temporary DID and you create your PBX with that temporary DID, you would be applying like your treatment to the temp number, like your, if it's going to an auto attendant or a call queue. Why it's important to have a temporary DID is because you can go place your phones on site and essentially do a forward from the port in number to the temp number. So that way you can leave the devices, the system would be behaving as intended, and then you can kind of come back and relax a little bit while you get your port process going through. So what we want you to collect in your project management meeting is a letter of authorization. Now, a letter of authorization is not always required. However, it is a good best practice for you to collect that signed LOA from your customer and keep it in a file or just have it on hand, right? Because it's the going back and forth and asking your customer for information that gets annoying. If you can just collect that, whether you need it or not, in your project management meeting, your life's just going to be easier if you need it, right? Same with collecting a copy of the most recent invoice. So that is the information you're going to use to submit your port request. If you do it in the portal, the port request, you will not need to upload the LOA anywhere. It will just be more of a kind of cover your butt situation, right? And then CSRs. Everybody always waits until the port gets rejected to try to get a CSR. If we can maybe start trying to collect that pre everything, it might make your life easier. So that way, if a rejection does come about, boom, you have it. You don't have to ask the customer. We all know CSRs are a little bit like unicorns. It's sometimes hard to find them in the wild, right? But if you can get that and you ask the customer beforehand to maybe request it from their current carrier, it might make your life easier on the back end. So that, the CSR is a little bit of a wish, but the other two should be non-negotiables, LOA and copy of most recent invoice. So once again, we have your resources list. So we've given you links to the customizable LOA. So you can pop your logo in the header, make this your own. We do have some trainings in RingLogix University. So how to submit a local port request, how to submit a toll-free request. And then there are, and always have been articles, very good articles on how to process a port in the knowledge base. So if you want to live look at it, like this is, we're actually doing it in the video. You can check out the knowledge or the RingLogix U. If you can always fall back on the knowledge base articles as well. All right, Wayne, do you want me to talk about this or you want to join in here?
Yeah, I'll talk about this side. Earlier I mentioned Jamie's role change. This allowed us to maybe adapt a little bit about how we're supporting our partners and opened up some new and different possibilities. So on the way we've typically worked with partners, we are sometimes distant from the selling process for obvious reasons. It's white label. We aren't often brought into a sales engagement to be direct in front of customers. We can do that, but we tend to be more sitting behind the scenes, reviewing deals with partners, consulting on the call it technical side, maybe even the sales side. If a partner, well, I've got a couple people now who are experienced on the team and have actually sold UCaaS services before. So We've got a little bit better view, I think, maybe on how to support you on the understanding of how to go sell and close an actual end customer. We can do LNP assists if you're, first time through an LNP process. I'm going to mention LNP as sort of just a weird process in general. Like, if you think about your cell phone, you walk into, let's say, your Verizon store because you've decided to switch from T-Mobile to Verizon. You walk out, your new phone is fully provisioned, and you're good to go, right? Like that's sometimes the experience that people expect. In this world, it doesn't quite work that way. It can be a weird, messy world. It's full of arcane rules that have been established between telcos. And I see there's actually a question that Carl's asking here, and I'm going to come back to it because it is around LNP. Um, but we can assist and handhold through this process a bit and help guide you and make sure at least we're submitting the right information. But we've also established two new areas that I wanted to point out, and it's what I call partner care UCaaS solution review. So basically, what that means is if you have a customer that you are trying to sell to, or a customer that you've sold, and you're working through the configuration and you understand that customer's requirements, then we would be able to assign a resource to walk through that configuration with you so that you felt good in being able to deliver on that solution to the customer. Um, Jamie will talk in a minute about some of those things that we would need to be prepared for that. But our expectation is that if you can give us some base level information, we can help you ensure that the configuration is correct. And then the go live, partner care go live assist would be, and in this case, it's going to be Jamie probably running point on this more oftentimes than not. She would be able to attend the turn up with you and the customer and have direct access to somebody in support should you run into any kind of issue. So two new services, they would be Jimmy, if you want to go to the next ticket, talk a little bit about how
Yeah.
this be requested and maybe some of the expectations we would have on information we may need to be effective.
Yeah, no, for sure. So yeah, so some of the documentation that I'm showing you well, all of it is great for you, but it's also going to be a requirement for, for us to help you. So I do want you guys, if you didn't have visibility into it or, you didn't know about it, now you do, you can use it for yourself, but it's also going to be a requirement for basically you to request some of the service items that Wayne just described. So essentially, what's going to happen is you're going to contact your partner growth manager, and you're going to let them know that you fit into one of these scenarios, right? You need go live assist, you need a UCaaS review, and they're going to either do it for you or help you put in a ticket. And what I will request in that ticket so that I can help you do these things are a PBX routing sheet, right? If I'm going to help you build a PBX or review it, I'm going to need to see what users you were supposed to create. So the user details form. I'm going to need your MAC addresses, especially on a PBX build. Um, I'd prefer an Excel format so we can upload them, copy them, do whatever we need to do with them, right? So just to set expectations, right? These programs, we're going to have, it's open to all of our partners. We're going to need to be organized with it, right? My master skill is organization. So I'm not saying that we're not going to accommodate, like if maybe something had to happen on the fly, but I'm going to need some preparation on partners' ends. These will need to be scheduled so that everybody can benefit from it, right? So if we just do things willy-nilly and on the fly, it's not going to work out for anybody. So you're going to, to have a little bit of thought that's put into this and when you're going to need assistance, when your cutovers are, and you'll need to get the tickets in so that we can get you scheduled and assigned. So hopefully that makes sense and it's not unreasonable. But It can be anything from creating PBXs, your PGM is still going to be available to maybe help you do brand new port orders, things like that. I'll tap in if they have too much stuff going on, but um that's going to be the process, and we're thinking it's going to be really cool. We hope that you all utilize it, especially if you just need a second set of eyes. Hey, I built this, I just want to make sure it's right. We don't mind helping, because when you grow, we grow at the end of the day. You are the driving force between RingLogix growth, and we want to help you train your people. We want you to be able to scale just like we are as we scale. So hopefully that all made sense. Unless you have anything else to chime in on there, Wayne?
No, I think that was a great overview. It's a new service. It's obviously we've done this through a request format, mostly because I think to be efficient and effective, having good documentation, having good details before we show up for the call will save everybody a lot of time. So I think our hope is that you'll embrace the new service, and it's something you find useful. And if you've got other ideas of services, that, open to hearing what those are, and consider if we can have people ready to go to deliver specific things.
And
Anyway,
we're hope and just so you know, the ticket format right now, it's just a partner success ticket. Soon you will see options for what you want to do. So if you're going to submit Go Live Assist, when you click it, you'll hopefully see sections that, you can choose, and then what would be needed in those sections, you need to upload it in the ticket. So we're going to make it a very standardized format. If you need it today, so you're getting a little preview of this. It hasn't been announced anywhere besides on this webinar. So if you're going to hop on and take advantage of it sooner than we have those options in the ticketing system, then just do a partner care ticket and we'll kind of go from there. But just know these are the things I'll be asking you for.
great. Thanks, Jamie.
You're welcome. So we did
So,
have some questions. Do you want me to read them to you, Wayne, or?
I'm gonna tackle Carl's first because I saw
Okay.
that one and I wanted to kind of circle back because I had mentioned a little bit about LMP, and I think it's a really good question. Uh, Carl is basically saying it's kind of difficult sometimes to get a CSR. And just for background here, when a CSR is requested, so we'll go through this process of getting information from you that we then submit to request from the carrier who has those numbers to port those numbers over to us, right? So there's a losing carrier in the process. And what Carl's referring to is sometimes that losing carrier rejects that request, and they can reject that request when there is a mismatch of information. So, what would be a mismatch? Information that might be like an address or the contact's name, the name of the company. Those are the probably most typical three fields that we see that when we submit them, they get rejected on. There's other fields, BTN numbers are wrong, things like that. But how we generally go clear that up is we ask you for additional information. If there's information that is immediately you look at and say, oh, well, that's mixed up because that's the wrong BTN number. Cool, we can fix that really easy and then resubmit the LOA again. When the right information is submitted, then the losing carrier has no reason to reject that, and we finalize the process. Well, sometimes that information is unknown to you, and I'll use an example. Um, Customers maybe been acquired twice, and they had this service for 10 plus years. The original person who signed up for the service is he still the account owner, no longer is even at that company. The name of the company has changed. Right now we got like this messy situation because the current contacts don't know what's on that uh potentially it's you'd hope it'd be on the bill. But when you can't trace it back and get information from the customer's invoice from the current carrier, then you have to go get additional information. This is where we might ask for a CSR. So to answer Carl's question, does RingLogix provide them? Um, the answer to that question is no, we do not provide a CSR. However, we can ask to look at the CSR. We can go get a CSR sometimes if we have a relationship with a carrier where they make that available. Some carriers do not make CSR information available to us at all, and we will not be able to get a CSR. But if you ask us to try and go pull a CSR, team will go and try and pull a CSR. And if we can get it, cool. We can get it and we can help you determine where the mismatch is. But we can't necessarily go get a CSR and give you a CSR. Our hope would be that through this process we can identify the mismatch without needing the CSR. And then if we needed, we can do our best to try and go get that and try and figure out where the mismatch occurs. So hopefully that answers that question. Jamie, I see several questions from Leslie. Do you want to
Yeah,
tackle?
I will. Leslie asked, can the notes section on a quote be used to communicate changes with the potential customer? Or is it for internal use only? And Leslie, you're right. It's the latter. It's for internal use only for you to put notes. Those notes are not viewable by the customer. So you're totally correct on that.
One
Um,
I think this isn't always intuitive. One area where that actually may show up, Leslie, is if you're quoting the customer and they rejected the quote and asked for a change, you will get a message back on why they rejected and what the change was that they were asking for.
yeah, the email notification. You got it. Yeah. Yes, yes. And then Leslie, you also asked, can a DID be both for calling and SMS? And yes, that is absolutely correct. So when you have a DID in your PBX, there is a way to unveil a tab. So the initial tab that you see is the phone. So like for the voice, so it'll route it to the treatment of the voice. And there's a way that if you hit, I can do a filter, a box will pop up and it'll unveil an SMS tab. So yes, that same number can also be provisioned and used for SMS as well.
Thanks, Jamie.
You're
There were
welcome.
there were a couple of questions around devices, and the questions were kind of the same. It was really around asking and understanding around models. So the questions were which models should I avoid? Which models would you suggest that maybe we provide to the customer? There, the answer actually probably has more to do with how you're provisioning the phones and not the model, and how the firmware is being managed. Those are the two questions I'd be centered on if I'm thinking about what's the most successful way to maintain the phones that are on the platform. And the reason I say that is you've got lots of options on how you provision phones. You can provision them automatically through our platform. You can provision them manually, which generally isn't recommended. You can provision them through your distributor, who oftentimes is probably going to use a like a portal that they have with the manufacturer of the phones, or you can go to the manufacturer's phones portals, or if you go super old school, you can build your own provisioning server, right? So there's a lot of ways to provision phones, and where things tend to go awry is somewhere within that provisioning process. There, we push data out to the phones, and if some critical data isn't pushed to the phones, there can be challenges around when we're doing maintenance and failover strategies and things like that, or just, issues with keeping those phones provisioned to the service. So I just want to point that out, that I would worry more about how you're going to manage the process and whether the process is going to flow according to a way that's going to work for you. And if you're managing the firmware, how you're going to do that, and just be comfortable with that. And that's why Jamie suggests it's easier to standardize on a phone. You don't have to think very long and hard. Your provisioning strategies at the same time. You're managing your firmware as you needed to, or you're relying on us to maybe do that for you. So hopefully that answered the question. It's not exactly the question, but I think those two things to me are more important than the actual maker model of the phone.
And Chucky just told me to remind Leslie that she has to have an SMS capable number to do that. So Leslie, you do have to have an SMS capable number. We could do a whole nother webinar on SMS. So I don't want to go too deep down that rabbit hole since this was installation. Maybe we'll do an SMS best practices webinar. It always seems to pop up, doesn't it, Wayne?
Yep. Yep. Jackie asked about fax options. There are fax options. I think we'd have to delve a little bit deeper. And Jackie, if you want to email that success@ringlogix.com, we can talk to you about that. Anticipating to release some new fax options in about 60 days. So also stay tuned for a little bit more details around that. That was all we had for questions. I think we had some good ones. What I wanted to do was just thank everybody and then remind you that we are going to be sending this out. I don't know if it's going to go out tomorrow. We're closed due to the Easter holiday. So we're taking Good Friday off, and then we'll be returning on Monday. So I'd set the expectation that the recording and the slides will be available to you. But again, just wanted to point out that we have many links throughout this this presentation that hopefully you use those as resources and develop your own implementation, right? Like you guys are call it smart people, you've got your own processes. This is meant for you to kind of make your own and build into your current processes. And hopefully you find it useful in training your employees and establishing good practices across the implementation of your voice solutions. So again, thank you, everybody.
Thank
Jamie,
you.
anything you want to add before we close out?
No, I just please, reach out if you need help, if if you want some help building your own processes, the more you know, the better your installations are going to be, and the more customers you're going to be able to bring on in a quick and organized fashion. So, no, I appreciate everyone joining. It's always great to see everyone's names.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.